All right, welcome back to another minis afternoon. We have an interesting little topic. It's one of those areas in Infinite Visions that not everybody happens to use, but those districts that do use it find it very useful. There's certainly a lot of room for improvement for districts being able to use it, and there's not a whole lot of moving pieces to it. Learning fixed assets is one of those things that usually you can pick up within a day or so. Setting up, though, and actually implementing it, that's what's going to take the lion's share of your time. So what we have on tap today, we have our own Mr. Jeffrey Smith in our office is going to be doing a presentation, going over fixed assets and kind of telling you the ins and outs, as well as some of the additional features. Like we'll take a look at how it reconciles assets and being able to import assets from accounts payable. So first of all, let me go ahead and introduce Jeff Smith here, and let me highlight you here, Jeff. Jeff, say hi to everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Make sure you email him after this and tell him what an awesome job he's done at this. He was very nervous, but we're going to give him all the attention in the world. So Jeff, whenever you're ready, go ahead and start sharing your screen and let's get this going.
Okay, so I'm here to talk about fixed assets. If you're new to fixed assets, there are some reasons that you might want to consider using it at your district. If I click on the right screen, it will allow you to track your capital expenditures. You can maintain a list of your assets for tracking and reporting purposes. It'll allow you to calculate your depreciation and reconciling your purchases to the general ledger for your audit purposes. Visions makes it easy. You can import your purchases through purchases and payables automatically, almost. You can do it through Excel. You can also just enter them manually. And if you're using barcodes, barcode scanning is available. So to start with, if you're going to import from purchases and payables, you'll need to enter your import parameters, which is located at General Fixed Assets Configuration Import Parameters. You can set up an account mask and your threshold for the items to be imported. Anything over the threshold will be considered a general fixed asset. Then you're ready to go ahead and import. So under general fixed assets, asset maintenance, you can import directly from purchase and payables. Once you do that, you'll receive a listing and you can kind of go through it. What you may want to do here is on this screen, you can decide which item should be a general fixed asset. You can just check the box. If you need to split records, you can do that here. Let's say you got ordered 20 Dell laptops and they came on one purchase order with a quantity of 20. You may want to split them out so you can charge them to different accounts. So you may want to split the records. After you've decided what to post and you've split your records, made your changes, then you can go ahead and do actions, post to GFA. And that's all there is to that part of it. If for some reason you made a mistake, let's say you wanted to go back and undo what you did, well, that is possible. You would have to go to a different location in Visions, go to Purchasing and Payables, Invoice Processing. And then you would create a column, set up one of your columns to be the GFA imported column so you can see what's there. And then you need to filter your grid. You could filter it by invoice number, by voucher number, maybe by the invoice date. And then you could just reverse the portions that you needed to. And then you could go back and redo that, make your changes. And you can also enter it by importing from Excel. You can also do it manually. When you're entering it manually, you'll go to General Fixed Assets, Asset Maintenance, and do a right mouse click. And it gives you a few options here. You can either use a specific tag number, you can use the next permanent tag number, or you can use a temporary tag number. So just select the one that you want, and you can start entering your information about your asset. The items highlighted in red come into play later. There are some fields that are required to calculate depreciation. So you'd want to make sure when you're entering it to be sure to check the general fixed asset box. Also on this screen, the category is very important. Then you want to go ahead and enter the detail for the asset. So you do a right mouse click and add, and then you'll come up with a screen where you can start entering detail. Now, I would advise to put as much detail as you can. There are certain instances where you may need to go back several years and look for a purchase date when something was purchased. So if it's here, then you'll be able to find it a little easier. Also, PO numbers, the check number would be good, vendor, of course, voucher number, anything that would help you find it later if necessary. Also on this screen, the cost field and the account code will be used later when we do our depreciation. So there are several tabs for entering your asset detail. So this was the purchase tab. The next tab would be the status tab. This one has a lot more going on this one. So you would choose your acquisition method, your condition. The ones in red are going to be used in depreciation. So you'll need to select a depreciation schedule, your GASB function, your expected life in years, your in-service date, and your salvage value. But anything that you can enter in this screen also, it just helps you in later to find it. So we have the warranty tab. You put in the date that your warranty might expire, any other notes that might be important. The last inventory date you can enter here. If you have a picture, you could put in a picture. And if you have any user-defined fields are available to you when you're using fixed assets. So these are the fields that are necessary for depreciation. Depreciation records are only generated for assets with the GFA checkbox checked, and the following fields must be filled in to allow depreciation records to generate. So you need the category, the cost, the depreciation schedule, the expected life, the GASB function, in-service date, salvage value, and account code. So once you have all this filled out, you're ready to generate some records. So you would go to the general fixed assets depreciation, asset depreciation actions, and generate records. If for some reason there are some error messages, you'll need to correct all of the errors before you can generate your depreciation. One thing to keep in mind when you're generating, before you start generating depreciation, is this could take quite a while to run. So you might want to start this at the end of the day, go home, get a good night's sleep, and start fresh the next day. It can run for several hours. There are a few different depreciation report types. And you can select them in the one location. So general fixed assets reports, depreciation reports. There's different report types. First of all, you can select what fiscal year you're running it for, and if you want to run it for a particular site, you can. You can choose to show detail. If you want to include non-depreciating assets, you can. You can order by site. You can page break by site, and then choose your report type, which can be by account code, by depreciation category, and you can print an exception report. You can print a booked asset detail by depreciation category. That's a mouthful. or you can print the book asset detail by Gatsby function. And this is a sample of the report for the cumulative book asset detail by depreciation category. So it has all of the columns you might need, your description, your tag numbers, your in-service dates, your book cost, your depreciation, current depreciation, prior net value. You can kind of see what's going on there. After you have successfully generated your depreciation, you should lock your fiscal year. And after your reports are all completed, and then just run this utility to lock all of the records so they can't be changed. So that's under General Fixed Assets, Depreciation, Set Fiscal Locks. You can lock for everything. You can lock for a fiscal year. You can even do it for a tag if you're need to. You can unlock as well. Let's say you need to make a change because the auditor found something. You can go back and either unlock a specific tag or unlock everything for the fiscal year, and then go back and make your corrections and then run the depreciation again. Any questions so far? No? Am I going too fast? Yes? Okay. Okay, so reconciliation, that's the next big thing. Reconciliation compares the fixed asset system to your general ledger journal transactions. So sometimes variances can occur, and they can occur for different reasons. Maybe something is posted to an incorrect general ledger account code. Could be that it wasn't, that something was purchased, but it wasn't entered on the general fixed asset side. There are some utilities that Visions allows you to make this process simple. Ideally, it would be good to run your reconciliation every month, but everyone is so busy, it usually doesn't happen. It's usually a yearly thing. But if you could do it monthly, it would be easier to track down if you do have any issues. And also there are reports that are available to fulfill your audit requirements. So before you start your reconciliation, you'll want to set up some masks under reconciliation, GL reconciliation account masks. Usually these will match what your import parameters from purchasing and payables are. They don't have to match exactly. They can be similar. This is an example of a GL reconciliation account mask. So you can do it by description and your account mask. This is the one for importing from payables. So they're similar, but they do sorry, I can't talk. They cover the same items. Okay, so let's get into it. So let's start the reconciliation. So you would go to General Fixed Assets, Reconciliation, General Ledger, Reconciliation. You can choose it by fiscal year. You can even do it by fund if you would like. If it might, sometimes if you have large items, cost items, it might be easier to find it on a particular fund first. But so you can choose your fiscal year and then apply selection. And if you have no variances in any of the columns, you're good to go. But otherwise, you may have to do a little digging. So the best way to do it would be to highlight. Let's say you can start with the GFA side or GL side. You'd want to highlight the column that you're looking at. And you want to, the easiest way is probably to highlight the column that you're looking at. So either the GL total column or the GFA total column. Double click and you'll get the details that are included for that particular total. Now it's probably the best way is to export the detail to Excel. So you just do right click, export to Excel, and then you need to do that in both locations. So you'd want to do it for the GFA total, also the GL total, and then export both of them to Excel, and then you can kind of put them side by side or whatever makes it easier for you. And then filter as much as possible so you can kind of narrow down it. You could narrow it down possibly by voucher number, possibly by date, and then just kind of go line by line or section by section until you find out what is left. And then that would be what is included in your variance. Once you know what your variance is, then you may need to enter the item on the GFA side, or you may need to have a journal entry made to correct the account that it was posted to incorrectly. So reconciliation is usually, it's done by fiscal year. So if your variance columns are all zero, then you are good to go. If they're not zero, this is when you would want to do your research. So some examples are if the GFA total is higher than the GL side, then maybe something was entered and it wasn't in GL, or maybe on the GL side it wasn't posted to a wrong account that you're not searching for in your mask. So you could either need to change your mask or find out why the item was posted if it wasn't supposed to, but kind of get the idea. Then there are some reports for reconciliation, the summary, asset detail, general ledger detail, and these are found under the same location under reconciliation reports. And this is a sample of the summary. So it includes your categories and your masks that were used and gives you the totals and your variances. And that's it. Any questions? I know that was fast.
So maybe go back and, yeah, there's not a whole lot to fixed assets, but I think there are a couple of areas I think I want to make sure that we hammer on. Can you go back to the slide for the asset depreciation? Like I said, that's the great thing about fixed assets. It's easy to set up, very difficult to implement and maintain because it takes a lot of work.
This one?
Yes, asset depreciation. So one of the most common problems that we see with asset depreciation is that if you go in here and you generate records and you get an error message, it'll pop up a message and then it will populate the grid behind you. So you're like, oh, okay, well, give me a message, I'll fix that error and then everything will be okay. No, because what happens is the system generates depreciation records for assets up until the point where it hits an error and then it just stops. But it doesn't stop dead out and say, hey, everything's messed up, I didn't do anything right. No, it just stops and anything that's done is out there and anything that wasn't done is just all messed up. So what you usually have to do is anytime you hit an error, and Jeff said this a little bit earlier, if you hit any errors, it means your depreciation records are incorrect. So they all have to be corrected, and not just for the fiscal year that you're working on. So if you're right now, if you're working on reconciling fiscal year 20 and you have assets that are in there from fiscal year 21 that aren't set up right, you have to fix those too. It's an all or nothing. They all have to be correct or nothing works. So that's why one of the things we talked about is it's really good if you kind of keep on this. Ideally, like Jeff said, it's once a month. I've not heard of anyone ever doing it once a month, to be honest. It's normally a end of the year thing. And then districts get to the point and say, no, we're going to call somebody in to come. We're going to call Lupe, or we're going to call David, or we're going to call somebody, and they're going to come in there and do this for us. And then you just pay for it. You're welcome to do that, but the easiest way is just do it month to month. You keep on top of it. It's easier to reconcile, easier to hammer out the depreciation issues. And that is 98% of all the problems that we find in general fixed assets are going to be issues with the fact that the depreciation records weren't done correctly. And usually that's just you fix the problem, regenerate your depreciation records, and you're fine. Like Jeff said, it does take a long time for it to run. So you got to kind of kick it off and it's going to tie up your infinite visions. So don't plan on doing anything for the rest of the day with infinite visions, because it will take several hours depending on how many assets you have or how many items you're deciding to regenerate reconciliation for or regenerate depreciation for. Any other issues that we've run across that you can remember, Jeff?
Usually that's it. Those are the big ones. Depreciation calculation. That's almost always it. That or reconciling seems to be the biggest issues.
Yeah, the import mask is another one. Usually the first time when you're implementing fixed assets, the import mask is going to catch you up front because there are things that are going to be in here that you may not be thinking about. And you see the reconciliation mask, it's kind of the same thing. It just gets into a little more detail where it really breaks it out by that object code there. But when you're doing the import, just make sure you're importing all the items you need. And any item that doesn't get imported as a GFA, a general fixed asset, will show up in a generic non-GFA tag. So for every fiscal year, you will have a non-GFA 2021. Do not ever delete this until you are done reconciling for the fiscal year. If you delete it, good luck ever getting that year reconciled, because it is impossible to get back. So make sure you have, even though they're assets that you're not normally going to track, they are expenses that you're going to see in the GL. And by deleting that non-GFA tag or the detail for it, it really does kind of make reconciling for the fiscal year impossible. So just make sure you manage and you kind of look and just be aware that if it's not a GFA item, it's a non-GFA item, and it's going to be in that non-GFA tag. So just leave that be until you have a need to really kind of dig into it. Okay, so I would like to say so it was a short session. I like these sessions. They're nice and short and sweet. And the one this morning was pretty short too. So great. I think it was like half an hour, and then this one was 25 minutes. So we're doing good. One thing I do want to point out is that this was Jeff's first ever presentation ever. I mean, he probably hasn't done a presentation since he was in the 7th grade. And I imagine he was much smaller back then. So thank you, Jeff. I think you did an amazing job. If you have, there are a couple questions. A couple questions came in on the chat.
Okay, so can you give examples on how to use subcategory fields to get the most out of that feature? And can you show how to update inventory date manually for assets? Let's see.
Are you talking, Deb, are you talking about the asset categories then?
Yes, how to use that as a tool for report purposes or for campus purposes. If you go into asset detail, maintenance detail, there is a field that is for subcategories, and I was just curious how other districts use that and get the most benefit out of that.
Let's take a look here.
If they break down maybe their stewardship into the types of equipment, or
no, it's on the asset master, right?
Could be. There, where it says category and subcategory.
Ah. So this one's broken down, and it does have the stewardship assets in there, and it does break it down a little bit further than that, but there's not, there's not a whole, we haven't seen anyone do a whole lot of fine tuning of these. You really kind of keep them, for the most part, kind of general.
But are there any reports that can be run off of the subcategory field?
I believe it's just off a category, but I have been known to lie. Give me a second here. You can do a page break by category and by subcategory on the asset report, but it's always going to be by category first and then by subcategory. So if you had multiple like-minded subcategories, but different categories, maybe you're trying to fine tune it out like that. It's always going to be category first and then subcategory. So maybe there's a report writer for it. I bet you can do it in InfoLink though. I can almost guarantee it's going to be an InfoLink. It looks like the report writer here will give you a little more freedom. Pick out, no, even this isn't very good because because of the way that the system tracks the subcategory, it's always going to be in relation to whatever category it is.
So you don't set up the subcategory to be the verbiage you want? Like, I'm wondering if there's a way to track all the computers as a subcategory or all projectors as a subcategory, other terminology, but that way you could tell district-wide what all you have and what your needs are.
Right. I mean, you could pull, the problem is not necessarily putting it in there. The problem is getting it back out. In a way that's useful. And you could, I mean, if you populate the grid, and Julie had a good addition, they use a few subcategories for technology and vehicles. So that does show in the grid. So if you're okay with just looking in there at a grid listing or exporting that information out to Excel, that would probably be the easiest to work. Some of these general fixed asset reports really kind of get messy and maybe a little bit difficult to get a whole lot of usefulness out of unless you're doing things like reconciliation and you're looking at the numbers. But that is probably the best useful way if you did change that subcategory. So like you said, like technology at specific sites.
Mike?
Yes.
This is Annette. I think maybe show where they can change those categories and the subcategories or add if they need.
That would be good.
There's a question here that says from where to set up subcategories. So.
Okay, so let me back out because I went a little too fast. Categories. And let's just say your furniture, equipment, vehicles. Within here, this is where you're seeing all your subcategories. Don't worry about the barcode ID unless you're using barcode scanning. The barcode ID is not going to do anything for you. You could add, remove, delete records out of here as you needed them. So like I said, subcategories are always going to be tied to the category that they're under. So if you had technology or something related to technology and you had it under multiple categories, you would have to go into each one of those categories and add that subcategory in there. So other furniture equipment, so let's say, I don't know, computer desks or printers or whatever falls under that, but you also have something that's like that under stewardship for maybe items that don't cost a whole lot of money, or maybe under large equipment, things like that. So you'll have to go into each one of those and then set up a subcategory under there. And then it's probably easiest to go into your asset maintenance and just pull the grid out of there. That answer your question, or at least kind of get you pointed in the right direction?
That helped quite a bit.
All right. Anything else?
I did have one additional question. If you need to update the inventory dates in a mass update, is there a way to do that?
I want to say yes, there is. In asset detail maintenance, assuming you had your grid populated. And, or maybe there's not. Jeff, is there not a mass update for fixed assets? I thought there was.
I don't think there is.
Oh,
You
that's
can-
a lot of keystrokes.
So you could do that with depreciation settings and do that with the other Gatsby things. But it for fields like that, it doesn't let you do a mass update. If you had a list of assets that you can identify and you want to let us know, you want to reach out to myself or reach out to specific, if you reach out to me, I'll just give it to Jeff. Reach out to Jeff. And if you can identify assets or a range of assets or a description of those assets that you want to change, we can go into the table and we can do that for you. But there has to be a way to identify it.
So would the only way possibly be if you did it electronically through like a BMI service? Is that how that date gets changed?
Yeah, unless you go into every single asset. Yeah. Unless somebody would have to go into those assets to manually update that. I think the BMI scanner, and for those of you still that haven't used it yet, there's only really one scanner that works with Infinite Visions and their fixed assets. It's by a company called BMI. It's an asset scanner. It's really just like a little handheld laser scanner and things like that. And you hook that up to your computer and it sends a file back and forth. So BMI is the scanning company. We're not talking about body mass index. So please don't make any jokes about my weight. But yeah, I believe that's one of the things that's on the BMI file that can send back and forth. Otherwise, like you said, it's a lot of, it's easy to set up, it's easy to configure. It's a pain in the butt to maintain, and it's a pain in the butt to reconcile if you let it sit for long enough. So, ladies and gentlemen, that will be the end of our Friday here. Thank you all for taking the time to join us. As usual, if you need help or need any assistance, please let us know. Just feel free to go ahead and send us an email. You can send it to fss@maricopa.gov, or if you want to talk to Jeff directly, he's kind of our fixed asset guy, jeff.smith@maricopa.gov, and we'll be happy to help you. Whether it's getting set up, getting started, or trying to troubleshoot issues, we'll be there for you, and we will charge you $0 for it. So unlike some other consultants. All right, guys, thank you very much. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next time. Jeff, again, thank you. Good work. Thanks, everyone, for the great questions today. We'll talk to you next time. See you later.
Bye.